Hi and Assalamualaikum to everyone that is watching this video. My name is Muhammad Ahmad Shahmi bin Muhammad Azrul, and today I will be presenting to you the question and answer for two sample t-tests. The question is, a marketing company is doing a market research to see the most popular complimentary beverages among teenagers in Malaysia. The teenagers are claiming that Starbucks is more popular than Kopi Kacang as far they have observed. The marketing company would like to test the hypothesis. Below are the orders received by Starbucks and Kopi Kacang. We observe it until the 20th day. The important key points in this question are Starbucks is more popular than Kopi Kacang. So Starbucks is mu1 and Kopi Kacang is mu2. So now let's move on to the next step, which is step 1, hypothesis. Hypothesis is for HO, we go to symbols and we create mu better and equal and mu again, and mu1 equals to or better than mu2. For H1, the hypotheses are we insert two mu's and then we add the symbol better. mu1 is better than mu2. Okay, now we move on to step 2, the significant level. Okay, first we color this, and then the significant level for this question is 95%. So the remaining level equals to 5% is the sigma for this question, which equals to 0.05.
Thank you, Aiman. So next, I am going to show to you the third step. First and foremost, we go to data, click on the data analysis, and as you can see in the box, we have a few options, but I am going to choose the t-test to sample assuming unequal variance. Okay, I have to fill in the input, whereby the variable 1, I'm going to pick the range of Starbucks order from day 1 to day 20. And as for the variable 2, I am going to create the range of Kopi Kacang from day 1 to day 20 as well. Click on the output range. And you can click wherever you want, but I will click here because I want it to be under step 3. Click OK, and this is what will appear. I'm going to label this. The variable 1 is Starbucks. And the variable 2 is Kopi Kacang. Now what we are going to look at in this table is the t-stats, p1 tail, and critical value 1 tail. I'm going to highlight that. Since we are using the 1 tail, we are going to highlight the p value 1 tail and critical value 1 tail. Moving on to the fourth step, the decision making. Before I start, I will reduce the decimal point here to make it easier for me. Okay. So for the first step, I am going to use the critical value approach and the p-value approach. So in this critical value approach, we are going to compare the t-stats here with the critical value of 1 tail. Hence, the 1.38, we're going to compare with 1.69. So as you can see, 1.38 is less than 1.69, which means that the t-stat is not in the rejection region because it is less than the critical value. Hence, we must not reject the HO because it is not in the rejection region. For the p-value approach, I am going to look at the p-value of one tail, which is 0.09, compared with our sigma. So you can see here our sigma is 5%, meaning we must compare the p-value with 0.05. So looking at here, you can see that 0.09 is more than 0.05, which means that we must not reject HO because the p-value is more than sigma. And for the last step that I'm going to show you is the fifth step, which is the conclusion. The conclusion is where we are going to look back at the question here in order to make the conclusion, and from which I can conclude is that the teenagers claim saying that Starbucks is more popular than kopi kacang is true, and this is proven because the orders received by Starbucks is higher than kopi kacang. So that is the conclusion. And now I just would like to make it look nicer. So I'm going to highlight all the steps. So these are the 5 steps that you must follow in order to perform the 2-sample t-test. I am Raja Atira binti Raju Muhammad Fauzi, and I hope that this video brings you benefit. Thank you.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Haikal bin Hussein. Today our group will present the assignment that we given by Dr. Rosmi related to sample 2 test and chi-square. So today I will explain how to analyze using a chi-square. Okay. For your information, we have created our own data contain gender and coffee shop, because we have 3 types of coffee shop. Okay, basically there are 5 steps to analyze a chi-square. The first one is hypothesis. Before we proceed to hypothesis, we need to understand what the question is. Analyze whether gender and category of coffee shop listed are related. So the next one is there is no relationship between coffee shop between gender and coffee shop. For H1, basically we analyze the H1 is opposite to the HO, so there is a relationship between step number 2 is level of significance. So usually we are using 95%, or level sigma is called 0.05 only. Okay, the next step is will present by the next presenter. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the step number 3, which is data analysis. For this step, we have to construct a cross tabulations table using pivot table function. First, we have to click insert and click pivot table and choose the data that we want to analyze. So for this, we have to select gender and coffee shop column. Choose where we want to click OK. So here is the pivot table fields will appear on your right, and this is the pivot table fields list dialog. So what we have to do is we drag gender to row, we drag coffee shop to column, and coffee shop to values. So this table will appear. So the count values in the cross tabulations table show the observed frequency. And we have to copy the pivot table and paste the value to duplicate the table. Okay, after we are done with the observed frequency, we have to construct expected frequency table. So to calculate the expected frequency female for kopi kacang, the formula is the total observed frequency kopi times with the grand total of female and divided by the grand total observed frequency for both genders. For male, we have to use the same formula, which is the grand total observed frequency for kopi times with the grand total of female and divided by the grand total observed frequency for both genders. And for Costa and Starbucks, we have to calculate as well with the same formula. Okay, and lastly, we have to construct a chi-square table. So to calculate the chi-square value for female in kopi kacang, and the formula is power in bracket also frequency male kopi minus with expected frequency kopi kacang, and square root of 2 in bracket divided by expected frequency female in kopi kacang. For female, we have to use the same formula as well, which is power in bracket frequency observed male minus with expected frequency male square root of 2 in bracket divided by expected frequency male kopi kacang. And for Costa and Starbucks, we have to calculate as well with the same formula. So this is the step number 3.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Nurul Naziha binti Basri. I will proceed with the next step in chi-square test, which is the step 4 in decision making. In decision making, there are two things to be pointed out. First is calculation of critical value approach, and then the p-value approach. Before we calculate both of these, there are 4 items that need to be determined. First is the significant levels, and then the degree of freedom, and then the chi-square CV. Lastly is the p-value. So we'll first determine the significance level, where we can put the significance level as usual is 0.05, where we can find this number is based on step 2, and then degree of freedom, row minus 1 times column minus 1. How to calculate this is by looking back at the table, where we can find that the row we have here is kopi kacang, Costa and Starbucks, 3 rows for total, and then the column is female and male, 2 column. So for the row 3 minus 1 is equal to 2, for the column 2 minus 1 is equal to 1, we'll get 2. Moving on is the chi critical value. For this part, we'll use the Excel formula such as chi-square dot inv rt. The probability will take the significance level, and then comma, degree of freedom as per calculated previously, then enter. Next part is the p-value. Also, we'll use the Excel formula, which is chi-squared dot test. The actual range is based on the observed frequency table, like this, comma, expected range is the expected frequency table, like that. Okay, so then we will go to the critical value approach, in which that in the chi-square, based on the chi-square value, we have calculated with the result of 1.46, and the CV is the 5.99 with round off of 6.0. So in this critical value approach, there are two possibility of answer, such as if chi-square is more than CV, we reject HO. But then, if the chi-square is smaller than CV, we accept HO. In which, based on this data, we found that the chi-square is 1.6 and CV is 6.0, resulting the chi-square is smaller than the CV. So the answer will be chi-square is smaller than CV, therefore accept HO. But then, in another way, if we illustrate it in the graph, it will be the x squared is not in the rejection area. Also, we'll make it the HO accepted. That's it for critical value approach. Moving on to the next part is the p-value approach. In this p-value approach, the number for the p-value can be found in the first step, which is 0.48. The sigma, as usual, 0.05. Also, in this p-value, it is the same with critical value. There are two possibilities of answer, which is, first is, if p-value is smaller than the sigma, we reject HO. But then, if the p-value is more than the sigma, we accept HO. Okay, based on this data that we have concluded, is that we can find that the p-value is 0.48, and the sigma is 0.05, which means that the p-value is bigger than the sigma. So the answer will be p-value is bigger than sigma, therefore accept HO. The end of step 4 is this step. So the last part is the step 5, which is the conclusion. How to conclude this data is by looking back at the HO. The HO in this data is that there is no relationship between gender and coffee shop, while the H1 is there is a relationship between gender and coffee shop. Based on the result that we have received here, in the critical value approach and the p-value approach, we both accept HO in both approach. So the conclusion will be there is sufficient evidence to suggest that there is no relationship between gender and coffee shop. In another word, coffee shop does not depends on the gender. It means that the popularity or the well-known coffee shop is not based on gender preference. So that's all for that's it for the step 5 conclusion. And it also the last part for the chi-square test. So thank you very much from my team and hope that you have a good day and thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.